great to chat with Jeff there.
I called him John once. My apologies. I was like, I don't know, because I was thinking of his CEO.
I
And I was like, I think I just called him John, and that's amazing.
I think I almost did too.
The next time we have Jeff on the broadcast, I would love to talk to him. He married into this profession. So we always ask everyone, how did you get into VC? How did you get into resilience? And he married into a company. So I'd love to hear, like his thoughts on that. And then I find it interesting if you've ever worked for or with a family-run business. There are positives and negatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so marrying into a family-run business, I would think honestly would be a political minefield.
To be honest, I have never heard that. Someone is married into it.
I love it. It's like the mafia. How did you join resilience? I married into a family. So I'd love to hear more of that story sometime.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him one day. See what he says. I know we've talked to obviously many people, and most of us, including us, fell into it one way or another. But marry into it? Nope.
I've never heard
That's a new one.
I've never heard anyone born into it. I'd love to hear I was born into this profession.
Yeah.
It's a legacy.
Well, we have met people now who've jumped into it. We have
jumped into it, fell into it, pushed into it. We've heard
voluntold.
Now we have our first married.
Yes.
So anyone else out there, if you have another way that you came into our profession, we want to hear from you.
Yes, the bar has been set at married.
Also interesting that him coming from consumer products, food products. We don't often have people in that background.
No, considering Kerry in our last hour came from the military.
And I never knew, and I've known Kerry a long time. I didn't realize that he went military accounting resilience. I didn't know that second step in that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I know a couple of people that have come from the military that were in logistics.
Yes.
That found their way into here. Not accounting, no.
Or that he worked on top secret projects that we can't talk about. And that is, something I've seen. There's a lot of programs right now, the DRJ and two other organizations, where they help veterans transition into the private sector.
Yep.
And a big part of it is translating the experience and the terminology. As you know, my oldest son is in the military, and I try to learn all these new acronyms every day. And I know a big part of it is just, hey, how do I take what I actually did in the public sector and put it into a resume that a private sector talent acquisition or human resources person would understand? But I never thought about before today. What if you worked on a top secret project that you, by law, cannot talk about?
Yeah, how do you translate
on
that?
On my resume, I redacted with unknown. Like that would be.
Yeah.
How do you toot your own horn and talk about your experience when you could go to jail for doing so?
Yeah, when you're literally prevented from saying it.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yes, I've worked in this industry. Oh, what did you do? I can't tell you, but still hire me.
But trust me, I'm good at it.
Yeah, famous last words, right? Trust me. So what else can we talk about before our next guest comes in?
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, let's look at still don't have no new updates in the last 2 hours on McDonald's.
No.
I'm not giving up on the configuration update. I don't believe that. That's my conspiracy theory of the day. That configuration update is all lies.
Well, one thing while we're waiting for our next guest, because we've still got a little bit of time for that. One of the topics I did have here was actually war and threats of war. Haiti was on the list. But one of the other ones that's on the list is Yemen, with the Red Sea and the ships that are supply ships that are being attacked, and the impact to the supply chain now. That I believe the other day there was a ship that was, I don't believe it sank, but it was actually hit a few times.
Okay.
And that is, I know many ships now and companies are going around the Cape of Good Hope, I think it is, Africa. Is that
Yes.
Good Hope or
We'll look it up.
it's one? I know it's South America or Africa. It's one of them. Cape of Good Hope there, and that's taking longer for supply chips now for Europe and North America. So with what's going on with these wars that didn't start out to have an impact on Yemen, who would have thought Yemen would be impacting the supply chain? It's not a large country. It's not a huge manufacturer of different things, but its political environment is impacting our supply chain, not uh, uh, the lack of supplies or equipment, things like that, or resources. It's the political environment that's now impacting the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I actually had I don't even know what day it is anymore.
Tuesday.
Maybe Sunday night. I had a conversation with someone, and they wanted my thoughts on like what's the difference between vendor risk management and supply chain risk. And so we were talking about manufacturers usually have more robust supply chain and supply chain management risk programs because of things like this. Because anything, if there's any bump in the night around the world, it can impact their ability to make their finished product. If you're in financial services, you're worried about someone upstream or downstream in that transaction basically having an IT outage. But if I'm building a sweatshirt, right now, the cotton, the thread, the dye, anything along the tag, anything could happen around the world, and it impacts my ability. And so, yeah, we saw in, one of the trends we saw in the 80s and 90s were manufacturers would go to whatever country was the cheapest
Yes.
for labor cost. And to your point, over the last few years, I worked with one manufacturer where the biggest decision maker now, it used to be number one was what was the cost of labor. And now that has gone to number two. And number one is what is the risk that our supply chain gets impacted? Because this company would rather pay a bit more for the raw materials to make sure they actually have the raw materials. Because the only thing worse than increasing your cost of goods is having no revenue.
Right.
Because if we can't sell our product, it doesn't matter. And so I have seen like this company, and so I know that there are others where they're like, okay, we're going to bring stuff back onshore.
Yeah.
It seems like onshore is my country and offshore is every other country. Is bringing some things back onshore so that when there are pirates or when there are issues in Yemen, it no longer matters.
Yeah, it's like the environments of Flint. We were offshoring because they're at the high risk of costs doing it here in our own country, so to speak. So we'll offshore. It's cheaper. Now you find out, now that you've offshored, there's all these other different aspects you didn't think of. And it really makes a big difference. So, and here's our next guest.
Yeah.
So-
So the biggest risk you used to have was our employees would form a union.
Yeah.
But to your point, by going offshore, now we have a risk of a war in Europe. We have the risk of pirates. We have the risk of tsunamis. If you've introduced more risk
Yes,
by reducing one risk,
but they weren't identified when you first made that decision to move offshore.
absolutely.